A private war. On May 3, 2020, just before sunrise, a small group of men landed on the Venezuelan coast. They arrived by boat. There was no flag, no official announcement, no declaration of war. Within hours, most of them were dead or captured. The operation was called Gideon, and officially it never existed. The United States government denied any involvement. The Venezuelan government called it an invasion. The men involved called it a mission. But in reality, it was something else. It was a private war. The men were not an army. They were former soldiers, private contractors, and Venezuelan exiles. Some had once worn U.S. military uniforms. Others had fled Venezuela years earlier. They were united not by a country, but by a story that promised liberation, justice, and change. They were told that Venezuela was waiting for them, that the people were ready, that parts of the military would defect, that this was not just a private plan, that powerful forces were quietly supportive. They believed it. The boats left from the coast of Colombia. The journey was long and quiet. Some recorded goodbye messages. Some prayed. Some said nothing. They believed history would remember them. History did, just not how they expected. Venezuelan security forces were already waiting. The plan had been leaked. Informants had warned the government. The coast was prepared. When the men arrived, there was no surprise, only gunfire. Some died on the beach. Others were captured. Among them were two Americans, Luke Denman and Aaron Berry. Both were former U.S. Special Forces. Both were shown on Venezuelan television, confessing. The images spread quickly. Two Americans in handcuffs, surrounded by Venezuelan soldiers. It looked like a spy movie, but it was real. Washington responded quickly. This was not a U.S. operation. This was not supported by our government. This was a private matter. But private matters do not usually involve former special forces, foreign beaches, and international headlines. To understand what really happened, we must go back, not to the night of the landing, but to the story that created it. Years before Operation Gideon, Venezuela was in crisis. The economy had collapsed. Hyperinflation destroyed savings. Food shortages became common. Hospitals ran out of supplies. Millions fled the country. Politically, the nation was divided. Supporters of President Nicolas Maduro faced an opposition that claimed his rule was illegitimate. Protests filled the streets. Violence followed. Trust disappeared. Into this chaos stepped a man named Juan Guaido. In 2019, he declared himself interim president. The United States recognized him. So did several other countries. Venezuela had two presidents, one with power, one with international support. This created a dangerous space, a space where legitimacy was unclear, where authority was fragmented, where people believed extraordinary actions were justified. Some believed Maduro could only be removed by force. Others believed force would destroy the country. Between these views, people were desperate. Desperation creates opportunity for hope and for manipulation. Among those watching was a former U.S. soldier named Jordan Goudreau. He had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. After leaving the military, he started a private security company called Silvercorp USA. It offered protection, training, and security services. It was legal, it was small, and it was ambitious. Goudreau believed he could do more than provide security. He believed he could make history. He believed he could help liberate Venezuela, and in doing so, transform his own life. Somewhere between ambition and illusion, the idea of Operation Gideon was born. Goudreau began speaking with members of the Venezuelan opposition. He claimed he could organize a force. He claimed he could remove Maduro. He claimed he had support. It was unclear how much of this was true. A contract was signed. It promised millions of dollars. It promised authority. It promised success. The document later became public. It showed signatures. It showed intentions. But it did not show power. Men were recruited. Some were Venezuelan exiles. Some were former soldiers. Some were simply looking for purpose. They were told they were part of something important, something historic, something that would change a nation. They trained together. They talked about the future. They imagined a free Venezuela. They were not told everything. They were not shown the risks. They were not prepared for reality. The story was stronger than the facts, and stories can move people faster than truth. At some point, the plan leaked. Informants warned Venezuelan authorities. The government decided not to stop it early. Instead, it prepared. It waited. It wanted the world to see. When the boats arrived, the government filmed everything. The arrests, the weapons, the confessions. It was a propaganda victory, a message. Your enemies are foolish. Your saviors are criminals. The captured men were put on trial. They were accused of terrorism, conspiracy, and illegal entry. They faced long prison sentences. The world watched. Goudreau denied wrongdoing. He said he was betrayed. He said the opposition abandoned him. He said the mission failed because others did not keep their promises. Perhaps, but promises are not power, and belief is not authority. The Venezuelan opposition denied involvement. They said the contract was invalid, that Goudreau acted alone, that this was never their plan. Everyone distanced themselves. No one claimed responsibility. Operation Gideon became a scandal, a joke, a warning, a tragedy, depending on who told the story. But for the men involved, it was not abstract. It was prison. It was death. It was exile. It was the end of a story they once believed in. For Venezuela, it was another chapter of chaos, another example of foreign interference, another reason for fear, another excuse for repression. For the United States, it was an embarrassment. Former soldiers involved in a failed invasion, private companies playing geopolitics, a reminder that power without control becomes dangerous. Operation Gideon was not a revolution. It was not a liberation. It was not a coup. It was a misunderstanding amplified by ambition, desperation, and illusion. It showed how fragile truth becomes in a world of propaganda, private power, and political hunger, and how easily people can be turned into pieces on someone else's board. The trials began quietly, not in an international court, not in a place designed for fairness, but inside a system controlled by the same power that had waited for the men on the beach. Luke Denman and Aaron Berry were charged with terrorism. The evidence was simple. They were foreign. They were armed. They had entered illegally. The context did not matter. The story had already been written. They appeared thin, tired, calm. They spoke carefully. They did not accuse. They did not explain. They waited. The United States demanded their release, but not loudly, not urgently. Diplomacy is often quieter than outrage. Negotiations took months, then years. In 2022, the two Americans were released as part of a prisoner exchange. They returned home. They did not speak publicly. They did not celebrate. They disappeared from the story. Many of the Venezuelans were not so lucky. They remained in prison. Some received long sentences. Some were forgotten. Some became symbols for one side and traitors for the other. They did not get exchanges. They did not get attention. The families of the dead received no answers, only silence. Silvercorp collapsed. Its website vanished. Its name became associated with failure. Jordan Goudreau faded from public view. He denied wrongdoing. He said he had been abandoned. He said he had tried to help. But history does not judge intentions. It judges outcomes. The Venezuelan government used Operation Gideon as proof. Proof of foreign plots, proof of enemies, proof that repression was necessary. It strengthened its narrative. It tightened its control. It justified more surveillance, more arrests, more silence. The opposition was weakened. It lost credibility. It lost trust. It lost momentum. The dream of a peaceful transition faded. Again. Internationally, the event became a curiosity. A strange story. A failed plot. A headline. Then it disappeared. But the deeper lesson remained. Operation Gideon showed what happens when private ambition meets political chaos, when ideology meets desperation, when belief meets reality. It showed how easily people can be convinced that they are heroes, and how quickly they become expendable. It showed that power no longer belongs only to states, private companies, wealthy individuals, exiles. They all play now, without accountability, without rules, without consequences. It showed that truth is fragile, that narratives are weapons, that perception matters more than facts. Operation Gideon was not important because it almost succeeded. It was important because it failed. It exposed the fantasy, the illusion, the gap between stories and reality. It revealed how easily borders can be crossed, how easily lives can be spent, how cheaply chaos can be created, and how rarely anyone is held responsible.
The men believed they were part of history. They were, but not as they imagined. They were part of a lesson about power, about lies, about the danger of believing that the world can be changed by force alone. In the end, Venezuela did not change. The United States did not admit fault. No one claimed responsibility. No one apologized. Only the consequences remained: prisons, graves, silence. Operation Gideon is not a story about courage or betrayal. It is a story about illusion and what illusion costs.